Dave Addey. I run a company called Agant, based up in Leamington Spa, and we develop mobile apps, mainly for iPhone and iPad. We developed the UK Train Times app, which is sort of our best known, biggest selling app, which plans train journeys anywhere in the UK, and has this really neat next train home button, which you can press that, the phone will work out where you are, and it will plan your journey back home no matter where you are in the UK. We've also done apps for Arsenal Football Club, QI, the TV show, and we recently did a Timeline World War II app with Dan Snow as well, which has been really popular.
Yeah. Cool.
In 2008, I got early version of one of these and thought, this has got some possibilities. And I'd done some web development in the past. I'd done some Apple Mac development in the past, and this was kind of a mix of the two, almost the skills I already had. So I thought, well, what's the app I would want myself? What's the app that I would want to use? Because that always helps if you build something you want yourself. And the app I wanted was for train times. I was travelling around the country, being a consultant at the time, and friends and family also thought they'd want the same thing. So I created a prototype, spent a month or so writing a prototype of the app I wanted myself. Approached National Rail Inquiries, saying, this is what's possible, what do you think? And they licensed me their data feeds to actually release the app on the store. And it was very popular. It sold well, I'm happy to say. It led to the company growing to be offices, 8 staff now. So it kind of all grew from there, from building that one app. If I turned up and just said, I've got a great idea, we should make an app to do this, they wouldn't have been interested, because I didn't have any sort of proof that I was a good person to license that with. But by building a prototype, by showing, sort of almost telling the story of what was possible, they really got, I think, how useful this could be, how it could actually help people who were travelling. So they were really up for licensing the data. I started out in the classic way of being, person in spare bedroom. It really was the stereotype. But actually, that's really useful because it keeps your costs way down. So I didn't take on offices. I worked from home. It's really important to have that separation though between somewhere that's work and somewhere that's not, especially if you are working from your own house. Otherwise, you spend all. There's no separation. You're always at the computer. So that was a really good way to get started and to kind of lower the risk of getting started. When the app did rather well, the Trains app, that led to lots of interest for new apps. And at that point I realised that this needed to be more than myself, this needed to grow. So I looked to take on offices. And the most important thing then was actually recruiting an office manager, a brilliant lady by the name of Hillary, who could take on all the things that I was struggling to have time to do, could sort those offices, could grow the offices up, and could also do finance, sort of expenses, travel, all the things that would have prevented me from going out and selling and developing the company. So having someone to help at that point was brilliant. When I started out, when it was just myself with this app out there, obviously that was the one thing coming in. And it sold pretty well. People seemed to really like it. I think it solved a particular problem. It helped a lot of people, as it turned out. But that over time, there are only so many people in the UK with an iPhone who travel by train regularly. So it's tailed off slowly over time. So now it's a real mix. It's some ongoing revenue from that app. We do some sort of contract work or sort of paid work for some clients. So there's always some money coming in. That's definitely coming in to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And we also then do some projects that are kind of shared investments, but shared revenue with clients as well. So it's quite a mix of spreading the risk effectively. And then some projects which are entirely self-published, which may do well, may not do well. They're a bit riskier, but we have this room to experiment because these other projects are bringing in sort of a good baseline. Well, it's a tricky one with apps because there's a temptation, especially for clients, to specify everything up front and say, right, we want one of those, please, and then get someone to go away for 4 months and build it. But that really doesn't lead to the best apps because this is still quite experimental, this world. The best way of doing these things hasn't really been defined yet. It feels like the early days of the internet when everyone was still quite working out how it went. So it's far better to understand the business need and then try something out, prototype it, define a loose specification that way, but keep developing it and iterating it very, very quickly so you can try things out and see what works, see what's the best way to solve that business problem on a mobile device. We've done quite a lot of work with book publishers, and the main reason for that is that book publishers always have new books, so they always have interesting content coming along. Now, not all content, by any means, is a good fit for an app, but those that are have real value with them. So we'll often partner with someone who owns either a set of content that really lends itself for app development, or perhaps they've got a particular skill or a particular data set maybe that might be particularly useful. But it's still a shared development, so that we have some investment and they have some sort of financial investment in the development too. And a lot of it is just predicting from the experience we already have of what we expect sales might be for that kind of app, insofar as you ever can predict these things. Yeah. One of the trickiest things, I think, is that there are only so many apps that get promoted at any given time, and you really do have to get, discovering apps or making apps, helping apps be discovered is quite hard. There is one store, at least for Apple devices, which Apple control completely, and Apple choose which apps get recommended on there, which get featured on there. So you have to build that relationship with Apple. You have to make sure they're very aware of what you've got coming up. And also you have to sort of do your own offline marketing and promotion to raise awareness anyway, so that they're more likely to spot it up and feature it. So awareness, I think, is the biggest thing. Separate from development, that marketing and awareness is the biggest thing. I think that one of the hardest bits has been finding really, really good people. And I've been really lucky in this. We have a full-time development team of 4 really, really good iPhone developers. But it's a skill that's in high demand at the moment. And it's hard to find people. It's hard to find people who've got the experience. And also that mix of not just development, but sort of aesthetic awareness and creativity. Because developing for these apps really needs a bit of both. You need your developers to be sort of involved in the creative process as well. So finding people who have both of those skills is quite hard. But as I say, we've been really fortunate. We found 4 really good ones so far. Hopefully we'll find a few more. This is going to sound cheesy, but optimism, I think. A lot of it is just positive approach to things. I mean, this is a growth industry. They've by no means reached the top of what's possible with it. More and more of these things are being sold every day. More and more iPads are being sold every day. And there is still a lot of experimentation to do. I think by being willing to take a few risks, willing to try things and learn from the ones that don't come off, it is just taking that sort of positive approach to it has really, really worked.
Okay, go ahead.
One of the hardest bits about this industry, is particularly about predicting what comes next, is that 4 years ago this industry didn't even exist. If you'd said to me 5 years ago, Dave, you're going to be developing apps for iPhones, I wouldn't have known what you were talking about. So it's really odd that it's kind of, even a few years ago the iPad hadn't come along. So trying to predict exactly what we'll be doing next, or exactly where we should be sort of almost honing our skills next, is really hard, because the industry's still sort of sorting itself out. That's one of the reasons why the developers that we've recruited, and the kind of people I'm always looking for, they're people who will pick up whatever the next thing will be. So it might be in 5 years' time, we're not doing iPhone apps anymore. Something else has come along, or Apple have invented another new gadget that we're developing for. Yeah. So it's, I think, as much about sort of keeping ourselves fairly fleet of foot, keeping ourselves aware of what the emerging next things might be, and trying them out as we go. A lot of the work I was doing before this was sort of intranet, extranet type projects, often quite corporate projects. Developing maybe relatively low numbers of users would use these sites, but they would be sort of training or HR sites that would actually be really, really useful for the people who did use them. Very much internal sort of business process apps. Websites, as it was then. Yeah. I think we might see the app world go the same way, that in a few years' time, a lot of the consumer-facing apps, a lot of that will have been sort of, will have bottomed out and will have been covered. And these devices will become much more useful within companies, where actually, if you've got a field of salespeople who are always out and about, the iPad is pretty much the perfect device for them. So building tools that are only for internal use that they have with them is a really interesting way to use those devices, and really, actually, really good value for money for companies. So I think that it might be in the same way as the web, when sort of public websites, then into intranets. I think this may go the same way, that it'll be consumer-facing apps and then sort of business apps, internal apps. So I could see us doing quite a bit of that in the future. One of the good things about being involved at this point in the industry is that there is still room to experiment. It's still not defined. So having the ability to have enough influence over a project, even a client project, that we can actually make suggestions to which direction is best to take the app in, and try a few things with the client, alongside the client, see what works, see what doesn't, even put it in front of their clients and see what they really respond to. That really, really helps, rather than being told, build one of these and come back. So having that kind of almost a partnership with the client is a really good way to work, and seems to really suit this kind of development too. There's still so much stuff to do. It's very rare to get the chance to be involved at the beginnings of an industry.
Yeah.
I'm old enough and was lucky enough to have been through it once with the web. So doing it again is kind of even better, to do it again. So yeah, I think we're a way off having exhausted all the possibilities yet.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest thing is that a lot of people start from the position of saying, I've got an idea for an app, and perhaps don't necessarily apply the same kind of business planning that they might do to something else, because it can feel as though a good idea for an app is really all you need, and actually in reality lots of things that might suit an app, as in suit a mobile device, maybe don't necessarily have the potential number of users or the potential market to be actually financially worth the effort. These things take some months to develop. So I think I'd say, if you've got an idea for an app, if you think this might be a good way to go, do a business plan for it, consider the audience, talk to that audience, get a sense of how much they pay, project everything, as you would for any other business plan, and just make sure that an app really is the best way to go, both practically and financially. But if it is, it's a great time to be trying it.